I'm Jeanette Keynes from Jewelry Arts Inc. And in this video, which is part 2, I'm going to show you how to solder close your jump rings and your S-hook, attach them to the sailor's knot chain, and finish it all up beautifully. So we have all the gorgeous bits and pieces. We have this lovely sailor's knot chain that Susan made like a rock star. Yeah. We have a little S-hook. Now, do you want to leave it one side smaller than the other, or do you want to try to get the more, it's fine, you know what I mean, because it's just a different look?
Yeah, not particularly.
Okay, then what I'll do then is we'll close the little side, and the big side will be the one that opens, which I think is very pretty and very functional. So,
sounds good.
like I said, with certain things like that, there's no right answer, you know, it's sort of just like, it works no matter how you do it, it's just how you want it to look. But sometimes you don't really have a super clear idea of what you want it to look like, you know. I'm always just like, I don't know. Does it work? Does it look nice?
Go with it.
Yeah. So, you know, when you're going to open jump rings up, you always want to twist them open because they close much easier that way. If you pull them apart, I mean, it's harder to push them together and then they'll look sort of all mangly. So sometimes I will just do it with the chain nose pliers in my finger, like that. If it's a really thick, hard one, you might need 2 chain nose pliers, you know, to twist it, but that's all we needed for that. And actually, let's squeeze this little guy shut and soldering closed first. So I'm gonna just do that. And usually what you do to make sure it lines up well, you have to, just like when you're butting a bezel together or something, you have to go a little bit past and then pull it back so that you get beautiful contact. If you try to just press it closed, it always sort of bounces back a little bit. Okay, like that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the smallest piece of solder you've probably ever seen, and we're gonna ball it up and put it in there to just have a little connection. So this is sterling, so we're gonna use hard solder. Did you notice that Susan leaves all her tools out right here on the right-hand side, so that every time I need them, I can just grab what I need?
My teacher told me to do that.
And she listened.
Yes.
God, it's a fucking golden age over at this joint, you know? Amazing. I just need one, but I never truly just cut one because I sort of feel like, you know, it's that whole thing about smiting. You know, you cut one when you need one, and you lose it. Yeah, smoting. No smoting. We don't want that. So I'm gonna ball them up though, because you know, a little ball will leave less of a scar. And as always, my goal in life: solder, zero cleanup. Pardon me for reaching. Because usually what I do with something like this, I put a tiny dab of paste flux there, and then my little ball. So like, I'm doing that. And the ball goes right in the joint there. You see that touching both sides? You see what I mean?
Yep.
You know, a little stinker?
Yep.
And then basically I'm just gonna heat both sides. And it's gonna flow right in there, and because we used a ball, it won't leave any kind of blotchy, oogie, anything. Okay, dry it a little bit. Guess I'll get the paper out of the way. You know, I'm probably going to point my flame a little bit more toward the thicker part, you know, but you see that, how that just flows in there, and it makes like a crazy, pristine, beautiful little connection. Now, you could always, if you wanted, then, like, put a little tiny granule on top. But again, these are just the little things that you can do, that you don't have to, but you can do if you want. Now, I'm not going to bother to stop and pickle and stuff because we're just going to go ahead, put it all together, and then you can pickle it all at once. Because I can see that the solder definitely flowed.
Yeah.
Okay. So, put that in here. Put this in here. You see what I mean? And then I'm going to butt these together and solder it closed.
Okay.
Okay? See what I mean? And I'll give that a little additional squeezing, I'm sure, to get it really nicely lined together. But that's why it's important to twist
Sure.
back. It comes back into position much more cooperatively.
And you find you can do that with your hands?
You can totally use 2 pairs of pliers. This is not super thick, and we annealed it, so I was kind of able to do it. But if it gives you a hard time, just use 2 pairs of pliers. No problem.
You can use the round and that one, or
Yeah, or two of the chain nose.
We can link you in.
Oh, I see.
The chain nose.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why, though, after you saw, it's really important to anneal so that they're easier to
Gotcha.
shape. So I was able to get away with it because we did that. Now, people get really nervous about this kind of soldering, right?
Yeah.
Because everything's close together.
Yep.
So I'm going to now tell you the secret to what it's all about. The whole key to doing any of this type of stuff is that you have to set yourself up so that the overflow from your flame is not pointed at the rest of the piece. So what that means is this. If you imagine that this is your flame, right? I want to set this up like this. So any extra flame is going to heat and be over here. So in other words, I wouldn't want to heat like this, where the extra from my flame is going to hit
Sorry
your
to, like,
chain.
get
No, get right in there. You wouldn't want to heat like this, because again, the overflow could heat over here and melt something when you're not paying close attention. Because that's the whole thing. You're looking at one thing. If your flame is also hitting something else, naughty things can happen. So, like, some people like to use like a third arm and whatever. Honestly, I just lay it flat on my block and go to. If you like the third arm and you find it easier, you know, go nuts. But, so all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut a little tiny square of the medium solder. I could use hard again, but you know, you can go down to medium. I'm gonna put a tiny little dab of paste flux right on the seam. And the seam is right on the top, by the way, if you can't see that little stinker. Like so. And then I'm gonna stick a little tiny cute square on there, and I'm gonna heat across and melt it, okay? Now remember, when you're doing jump rings, you do not want a big piece of solder. It leaves an ugly little like lump, and then who's gonna clean that up? We've gotta fucking clean that up. We don't wanna do that, you know what I mean? Or live with the lump. Neither, you know, none of those things are good options, so. So you see like that ridiculous little square? That's about right. It could be a little smaller too, but somewhere in that vicinity is what we're looking for to fill in that seam. Okay? Because most of the time, the problem is that most people just use too much solder, and it leaves a big funny looking lump, and you know, like I said, all bad things. So in this case, I usually leave it as a square because it has more surface area. It touches both sides a little easier to fill it in. But you can use a little ball. Both will work. I'm going to switch this out to a 00 though, because we do want kind of a nice little flame. There we go. See that? Okay. And I'm pointing my flame across because I am basically hitting both sides of the seam. That is what I want to hit. And you notice the seam is basically as far away from everything else as it can be. Okay. So I'm going to gently dry it. Got my tweezers here in case something, you know, hops around in any kind of naughty way. See that? There. That's it.
So you're pointing right at it.
It climbed around to the back a little bit, but it didn't fall off, so I just left it, you know? You see how like the solder's right there and filled in?
Yes.
Okay,
Gotcha.
so it moved, but I just was like, as long as it's still stuck there, I don't care. I'm just gonna heat and then it flowed through. If it had fallen off, then I would have bothered to move it. And you notice, I mean, after you pickle it, it'll look nicer than that, but like there's no lump, you know,
Right.
you just wanna fill in the seam.
Right.
So, what I would do, pop that in the water, go put it in the pickle, and we'll take a nice look at all of it. And if anything needs more solder, if anything is anything that we do not love, we will deal with it. Okay?
Now do we...
And we have to do the other end too. So you can,
okay.
if you want, go ahead, do the other end, solder it closed, then throw it in the pickle and we'll look at everything.
So put a jump ring here.
Yeah, exactly. Because the other end just needs a jump ring. So for example, open it a little bit. Actually, if you want, let me demo this one too so you can see it again.
Sure.
Ideally, trying to get them nice and lined up. There you go, that's good. So I'm gonna pull it out so that it's, again, as far away from the other stuff as possible. So the seam is right there. Can you see that, Alexis?
I'm coming around.
Want to come over here?
No, it's okay.
New paste hooks, cute little square of solder. See those cute little guys?
Those are two
Yeah.
medium.
Yeah. That's like I'm saying, you have to realign your brain to be like, that is what we're dealing with here. Little tiny pieces. Yes. Some people like to use a brush, but I always end up fluxing when my piece is warm and then I burn my brushes. So I just use tweezers. Okay, so it's a little crusty, but you see that, how we've got little
Yes.
paste flux there.
Yep.
We've got the solder touching both sides of the seam. But again, I have my tweezers. When I go to solder it, if it moves or whatever, I'll give it a poke. Okay. You want to see if you can get kind of over top of that, Alexis?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me once you've achieved the correct.
Actually, no.
Thank you for participating in our creation of art. I appreciate it.
Pleasure.
All right, I'm good.
Ready? Okay, so heat it a little bit. I've got my tweezers here in case my solder does anything naughty. You see that? It just melts.
yeah.
And then, boop, just filled in the seam. And
Does the solder often jump?
sometimes. You always gotta, that's why I always have my tweezers ready to go. If it needed poking, I would have poked it. And you see how like that's just enough to fill the seam.
Yeah.
That will take like, we'll swipe it a tiny bit with green paper and that's it.
Gotcha.
All right. So I'm going to dunk this in the water so it isn't hot, throw the whole thing in the pickle, and then we'll take a good look at everything and make sure that there's nothing else that we desire. There you go.
Okey-doke. Thank you.
You're welcome. So look at this sexy beautifulness. Beautiful hook, beautiful jump rings. Usually the only thing I do after I've soldered the jump rings like that is I take my green paper and literally like a couple swipes and then throw the whole thing in the tumbler for, I would say, at least a good hour. You know, because chain is always much better tumbled.
Yeah.
It's more silky, you know, that's what gives it its drape, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like without tumbling, it has no drape and therefore it is not sexy and delicious, which is what we require out of our chains.
Absolutely.
It also makes it a little harder, which is always good. I mean, not
Yeah.
as much as hammering, but it stiffens it up a little bit. it.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing for your S-hook and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, literally, that's what I would do. Throw it in the tumbler for an hour, and then let us take a sexy centerfold shot of it. And that's it. You just wear your chain and enjoy it.
Very excited.
I mean, look at that.
I'll be so
That
proud of
looks
it.
great.
I mean, who did that? You know?
Yeah, that was a great project.
It's so good fusing, like making chain. I love chain anyway, like, so it's amazing. But it's so good for your hand skills to do all that fusing with the torch of all those multiple links.
Yeah.
It really is like a good learning project.
Yeah, for sure.
Yay! Into the
For
tumbler.
sure. Okay.